and I am currently a student in Term 2 of Business Information Technology program, and I will be the host guiding our panel discussion today. Behind the scenes, I have my team, Aman and Anais, helping with the polls in our digital platform. Before getting started, I want to invite you to take a look at the polls. They are located on the right-hand side of your screen, next to the live chat icon. This way, you will have an opportunity to vote for an area of interest to help me guide the discussion. Click on the option you prefer and place your vote. So, all right, I have the pleasure to introduce you to the alumni panelists. To start, I have Gazheek Morrisseau-Sinclair, Anishinaabe from Treaty 1. You can call her Gazheek. Gazheek is a web team lead for RedSpace, a tech company on the East Coast. She has an informatics degree from Dalhousie University and a computer analyst programmer diploma. Gazheek grew up in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Treaty 1 territory, and is a citizen of Peguis First Nation. Sports shaped Gazheek's childhood and teenage years. As an adult, she transformed them into opportunities to play and also coach hockey and softball at all levels across the country. She is passionate about bridging the gap between people and technology, and teaching anyone who is interested in how to code. Gazheek has taken this desire seriously and is passionate about her volunteer work at Girls Who Code and Wichi-Wakinak Learning Center. She lives with her partner in St. Andrews, and together they have 3 dogs and live in a multi-generational home with her parents. She enjoys barbecuing, video games, and CrossFit, and her Starbucks order is 2 short fly white. So if you can wait to the camera, Gazheek, please. Thank you. Now you know if you come with the right Starbucks order, Gazheek will be happy to have a conversation with you. Next, I have Sinyama. Kay started his career in 1998 at Zambia Sugar in Mazabuka. After 2 IT jobs in Zambia, he relocated to Winnipeg to pursue an education in application development. He graduated in 2006 with a diploma in application development. After graduation, Kay got a job at Great West Life, where he spent 6 years working as a technical lead. In a pursuit to get closer to delivering more business-aligned initiatives, Kay moved into a solution architect role at Investors Group, now IG Wealth Management. At IG Wealth Management, Kay worked with numerous business portfolios, including fund services, corporate, finance, trust accounting, risk management, and human resources. When he's not working, Kay enjoys photography, filmmaking, and music. Kay, if you can wait to the camera, please. Thank you. Next, I have Suzanne Gibson. Suzanne graduated from the Business Information Technology program in 2020. Having done her co-op at Manitoba Blue Cross, she became a permanent employee after graduation, where she now works as a programmer analyst. Suzanne loves being part of a team where she can help design creative solutions to solve day-to-day problems faced by clients. When she's not coding, Suzanne can usually be found baking, playing tennis, or with a good book. Suzanne, if you can say hi. Thank you. And next I have Juanita Fraser. Juanita is an IT professional who has spent her career working in the financial and e-commerce sectors. After graduating from the computer analyst program, she has held various roles, including developer, business analyst, product owner, product manager, and many hats in between. What Juanita loves the most about the IT field is working with customers and technology, especially working with teams to solve complex problems and creating solutions that customers love. Juanita, if you can wait to our audience there, thank you. And last but not least, Matthew Kaisaris. Having graduated from the Business Technology Management program, Matthew has always had a passion for working with startups and small businesses. Over the course of his career, Matthew has found success by finding a niche to excel within, specifically as a project manager in the digital marketing industry. His current role is with a boutique agency out of San Francisco, where he has the opportunity to work with large household names such as Netflix and Masterclass, and is currently working on building a brand new project management department from the ground up. How exciting. Matthew, if you can wave to the camera. Thank you. And now for the part you all have been waiting for, the exciting part. Let's see the results of our first poll. And based on that result, we're going to choose the first question. So technology, we want to talk about technology with our alumni panel. And let's see. So the first question, how would you describe your first technology job after graduation? And if I can start with Suzanne.
Hi. Well, I'm still at my first technology job after graduation. It's also where I did my co-op. So I'm a programmer analyst at Manitoba Blue Cross. Essentially, it's a Java development position, but because the analyst part is also in there, there are some business analyst responsibilities sort of wrapped up in that. So a typical day would include analyst responsibilities such as coming up with business requirements, figuring out what's needed for the project that I'm on, and then also coding those, writing code to go along with those requirements, and coming up with test plans so that we can ensure that the code written does match what the requirements were, and then testing with business users. So generally our projects, the things that we're developing are for our internal business users. So we'll get together with them and we'll test with them and make sure that it's all good to go before merging it. So that's essentially what my day-to-day looks like right now. That's my first job, still there. So yeah, it's good.
Great, thank you. And you graduated from the BIT program in 2020, is that right?
I did, yes. Yeah, so I've only been there for a few years.
That's great, because that's what many students are in right now, BIT. And so it's great to know your experience. We're looking forward to after graduation. So I want to invite the next panelist to share. The question is, how was your first tech job after graduation? So if I can have maybe Gazheek pitch in.
Sure. So my first job after graduation was actually a lot of fun, because it was with a really small shop in Halifax. And so it was only like 7 of us. So there was 2 front-end devs, 2 back-end devs, a project manager, and the owner of the company. And so you got tons of experience, like right away, basically doing everything. So even though I graduated and most of my experience was coding applications, I really had to get comfortable with doing things like infrastructure development and QA and like troubleshooting deployments and all that kind of stuff. So working for a really small shop like that, while it was a little bit scary not to have, you know, such a big structure around you to support you, it was a great learning experience at the same time.
Thank you for sharing that. And your program was the CAP program back then? Yes.
Yeah. So we were the CAP program.
CAP program, yes. And Matthew, you're coming from BTM, is that right? What can you tell us about that first graduation, first after graduation job?
Yeah, definitely. So I come from the BTM program, and my first job was business analyst after graduating. I actually started that job before I graduated, and I stayed there for a little over 2 years. And it was a very similar experience to a lot of other panelists here. It was a small business. You kind of have to wear a different hat every other day depending on what needs to get done. But day to day, it was a lot of just gathering requirements, making sure that any communication between the company and any of our clients was was up to par, and that any communication internally was also just up to par as well, making sure everybody knows what's going on. And that was kind of my biggest role, was being that facilitator of information between everybody internally and externally as well.
Thank you for sharing that, Matthew. I am seeing in the general chat some really, really nice warming comments about you. Matthew, you're a legend. BTM rep. That's awesome to hear. So if we can move on with Kay, what can you tell us from when you were a new grad, your first job?
Hey, thank you. Thanks for that. For me, it was interesting because we wrote our last, I think, exam on the 15th of December, 2006. And the following Monday, the 18th, I started my first job. So it was exciting. It was my first real job in Canada, and it was at a slightly bigger company, so Growers Life. It was a bit of a change in scale for me based on my previous job in my home country, Zambia. So lots of learning, understanding, bigger scale, bigger IT department. But through it all, made lots of good relationships from a technical standpoint, but also leaders within the organization. So that's a little bit about my initial job post graduating.
Thank you. Yes, I saw in your bio you did IT in Zambia, right?
Right.
Yeah, was that for like a big business?
I started off at a company called Zambia Sugar, which really was agriculture, manufacturing, and then the selling of sugarcane-based products. So they grew the cane, they harvested it, they collected it, processed it into sugar, and then things like jams and that kind of thing that they exported into the European Union and other areas. And then from there, I went to then work for the Revenue Authority in Zambia before coming out to Canada for some cold winter weather.
That's right. That sounds like really big operations. Thank you for sharing, Kay. And Juanita.
Okay, so I did my co-op with a local Winnipeg company, and they decided to keep me. And my first job there was as a programmer analyst, so similar to some other experiences here. And they had their own in-house IT, and they wrote their own software. And like Suzanne, and I learned a lot. You play a lot of different roles, and I enjoyed that because I wasn't just doing one thing, and I got to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. So, I mean, you get a lot of theory when you're in school, but when you actually get into it, you get to see what the nuances are of the different roles you can be in, and then you can grow your career from there. So I really appreciated that early experience.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing your experience. And it's the time that we check the next poll. So inviting everyone to take a look at the polls and vote. Okay, giving us students a few seconds there. And it looks like we want to talk about IT career advice. So the question is, how do you see jobs in this field changing in the future? And that's from the perspective of career advice in IT, BTM. Thank you. So maybe we can get started with Gazheek this time.
Happy to. Okay, so I guess where I kind of see jobs kind of going in the future with this is the last conference I got to go to back when we were able to go to conferences and meet in person. A lot of the presentations that they were talking about was very, very much like people centric and people focused. And so it's really like, while I think technology has done like a great job at seeing like where's the bounds of and the limitations of of like the actual computers or hardware and stuff like that. One of the things that we've forgotten about is the limitations of people, and we can't advance technology when we leave people behind. And so one of the biggest discussions that was talked about there was ensuring that when we build our applications and when we build technology for people, that we aren't thinking of it as like the best case scenario with the best access and the best access to technology and the best internet access, but it's like understanding who you are coming into contact with and what are those limitations. And so it could be various limitations of people with technology limitations. It could be socioeconomic limitations. It can just be infrastructural limitations. And so it's about designing and building technology that is still around people and not forgetting about people and not leaving them behind. So definitely everything is moving more around people and society and stuff. And so that's, you have to be able to communicate. You have to be focused around people and everything, and not just around tech and the best algorithms and everything. So yeah.
Thank you so much for that perspective, Gazheek. Definitely important, the bridging that gap between technology and people. So the question, how do you see jobs in this field changing in the future? From an IT career advice or BTM perspective. And so if we can follow up with Matthew.
Yeah, so what I've seen in the few short years since I've started working in the industry has been that a lot of companies are transitioning from a you work 9 to 5, you work 40 hours a week model to here are your deliverables, get them done, work whenever you need to. At every company that I've worked at, they've set kind of core hours where you need to be available. But outside of that and going to any meetings that you have on your calendar, they don't really care when you work. So I can, especially during COVID, I can take an hour off and go take my dog for a walk, or I can go grocery shopping. As long as I'm not missing any meetings or any deadlines, doesn't really matter when I work. And I'm even seeing a lot of my coworkers picking up second jobs in the industry, as long as they don't conflict with what they're doing. They're making 2 incomes. They're working in 2 different positions at 2 different companies, as long as they're getting their work done. So we're seeing a lot of that, or at least I'm seeing a lot of that shift away from you being owned 9 to 5 to you just doing what's in your job description and making your company happy.
Thank you for sharing, Matthew. Definitely nice to get a sense of how the jobs look out there, and then look forward to the future. Kay.
Thank you. So mine will build on a little bit on what Gazheek talked about, which is people centered. I think sometimes as IT professionals, we tend to get lost in the exciting world of tech. But one of the best pieces of advice that I've received so far in my career, and I'd like to pass on, is one of my mentors early on said, create relationships with the business. And what they basically meant was, make friends with people in the business so that you can understand their business processes. Because as you understand business processes and why they're important for the organization, you can actually build better software and better technology, right? So I'd love to pass that on and say, relationships with people in the business and extending your network, not just with other IT professionals, but into business, whether it's HR or legal or finance. That's just going to make the projects that you end up being involved in really efficient and fruitful.
Awesome. Thank you. Juanita.
Yeah, wow, lots of good responses so far. So I'm just going to kind of add on to that. One thing that I've noticed is that when people are hiring for different positions, they're not just looking for that solid, education background in the domain, but they're also looking for other experiences. Like myself, for instance, I was a teacher before I got into IT, and just having that multifaceted approach. So just figuring out a way that you can leverage your education in IT along with your experience in other areas can maybe point you towards the dream job that you're looking for. So So just because it's not maybe straightforward, you might be able to put in a couple different pieces of different things and find that niche that you're looking for.
Thank you. And Suzanne?
Yeah, so along with what Matthew is saying too, I think remote work is going to continue to be kind of the order of the day. I don't know, I think seems like a lot of companies are just continuing along that path, even with COVID sort of dying down, if it is. I think a lot of people are going to continue not going into the office and stuff, so that's definitely something to consider. Another thing at our company, actually right now, we just transferred almost all of our infrastructure to the cloud, so I think that's a big thing to think about in IT. Everything is becoming more and more cloud-based, and having a knowledge of that, I think people who are hiring are really looking for a knowledge of, it doesn't necessarily, I know Amazon is a common one, it doesn't need to be AWS specifically, but any cloud-based technologies, or even just being familiar with the terminology and stuff, I think that a lot of IT jobs are becoming more and more closely related to that. And I think that's another thing to consider as well.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing your experiences with the audience and joining us today. And let's see the next poll. So while we wait, we have some comments from the audience. COVID has shown us just how adaptable we can be. Yes, all experience give you a unique perspective. That's from Gazheek. Thank you. And so it looks like we have a tie, workplace inspiration. Maybe we'll, so continuing education. How do you keep up with technological advancements and changes in your field? That's our next question. And I will invite Suzanne. I had you speak last, so you're the first one this round.
Sounds good. Actually, all right. It kind of relates to actually what I was just saying. So when, like I said, our company is moving to the cloud, so a lot of us didn't have any experience really with that. So there was education that definitely needed to happen there. So we were given access to training, and we can complete it on work time. Like, we don't have to do it on our own time, but it is something that you have to take personal responsibility for, like making sure that you're learning the things you need to learn and knowing who to ask if you have questions and stuff like that. So that's big. I would say for most of the education, or like learning as I go, it's fairly gradual. I kind of just, as I gain new responsibilities and as I continue in my career, I sort of just learn as I go along. So I'm not spending like tons and tons of time outside of work learning, but I'm learning a lot as I'm working. So I think that's more how my experience has been with that.
That's great to hear. Thank you. And since we're on the topic of continuing education, if you could also mention if there is any professional journals or organizations that we should be aware of in our field, or if after your programs you have continued to pursue education, or like any bridges, like Juanita was saying, she was a teacher before, feel free to throw that in there. And so next I would like to invite Juanita.
Okay, so let's see, continuing education. I feel like I'm always doing something. So some things that I've done is I've got, I would say that I'm more like in the training for like supporting roles, so not specifically technology, because I've kind of drifted away from the development side of what I was trained to do. But I've taken things like things for organizational change, like change management certification, some agile certifications for product owner and scrum master. And then I just enrolled actually in Google's user experience designer course. So that's what I'm doing, because I'm looking for skills that will complement the role that I'm in and where I'm going to next. So I would that's been my path over the years, is finding certifications and courses and even workshops in complementary kind of training.
Valuable information. Thank you, Juanita. Matthew.
Yeah, so I am in a similar position as some of the other panelists here, where I just kind of get exposed through new advancements through where I work. Being a project manager, I'm never really the front and foremost expert of whatever I'm working on in my company. I'm just kind of knowledgeable in all areas, but I'm definitely not the expert. So I'm fortunate that the people I work with are the ones who largely keep up with new industry trends and advancements in the field. But on top of that, I just do a lot of reading, whether it's like forums online or whether it's just somebody posts something on LinkedIn. I'm just constantly absorbing whatever is kind of being thrown my way and just trying to keep up with it that way.
Thank you. And Matthew, since you are the only one in BTM here and most of us are in IT, just a question of curiosity. As a project manager, do you feel like a jack of all trades sometimes, or that you have to really learn what's happening on the job?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's been a big strength of mine, is that I am just very interested in learning stuff. So I have no problem sitting down with somebody or shadowing somebody or just reading about something that I don't have any experience in. And it's something I've always really enjoyed. But it's definitely beneficial for a project manager to just kind of learn whatever's out there. Because as I said before, you're probably not going to be the expert of something or like the biggest expert of something that you're working on, but you need to be knowledgeable enough to still communicate with those people and communicate with your clients. So being kind of a jack of all trades definitely pays off.
Thank you. Great representation for the BTM. Gazheek.
Sorry about that. Got sidetracked by the chat there. I would say that, yeah, so I would say that definitely keeping up with advancements by having conversations with people. So like not staying in your own little silo. And it's been very difficult, especially since COVID, because like you don't get to go to the office, you don't get to have those like impromptu water cooler chats, you don't get to talk about like the latest and greatest tech. And so it really requires like more of an effort to go out and seek that information. So so it's really important, like especially with this remote work, is that you try not to leave yourself in silos. And so making sure that you have like access to information, make sure that you're like reaching out and talking to people that have different experiences, different views, and are working on different things, because they'll be able to share. So like I like talking with my colleagues who are in InfoSec or who are in like UX design and all that kind of stuff, and just talk shop, you know, whatever it is, and you just learn so much stuff from that. So that's definitely how I kind of keep up on it. Other than that, I subscribe to like mailing lists. So I have a Medium account, so I love getting like that email in the morning of like, here's the newest, you know, topics. And you know, you have to read those things with a grain of salt, but it gets you thinking, right? And it puts things in your mind, and it makes you question things, and you're like, oh, I've never heard about this before. And you kind of get down a bit of a Medium article wormhole there sometimes. But yeah, so.
Awesome. Thank you, Gazheek. And before we move to Kay, please, I'll remind you to take a look at the next poll. And thank you all the panelists for engaging with the participants in the chat. So, Kay, continuing education.
I would say there's almost two tracks for that, right? Like coming out of the IST program I did, I saw a technical track in terms of you know, continuing education, but some people choose the leadership track as well, right? So you pick up your technical skills from college or whatever you might have up to that time, and then very quickly start coupling it with leadership side skills. So I chose the leadership track, and I ended up doing a certification in management, but while coupling it with technical skills. So because there's a lot of value I think that you would be able to get from certifications, whether it's data or cybersecurity or programming, that could actually help you move your career forward quite a bit. But the leadership side skills allow you, they give you those soft skills like, communication and relationship building, to be able to move up within the business to a place that you can, help deploy solutions much quicker and set direction.
Awesome. Thank you. And so it looks like we have the answer for the next poll. And our participants want us to talk about soft skills. So the question is, considering all the people you have met in your field, what personal attributes are essential for success? And it builds on what you were saying, Kay. So if we can start with Suzanne.
Hi, yeah. I would say for soft skills, communication is obviously a huge one. And the ability to work in a team. I think from what I've seen, almost all IT roles seem to be in a team of some sort. So the ability to work with other people is very important. And I would also say, well, obviously problem solving is really important, and determination, I think, just because, well, when you're programming, sometimes you can be beating your head against the wall for a really long time, and you just got to not give up. So I would say those things are necessary for success.
Thank you, Suzanne. What you just said, it's a live reminder of some assignments we're facing as students. But
I remember those days.
Yes.
You'll get through it.
Yeah, it's great to bounce ideas off with teammates, and so it's good to hear that it continues in the workplace. So Juanita.
Yeah, okay, this is interesting. I would say if I was going to pick one thing, it would be people that are able to build trust amongst their teams that they're working with. So whether that's through collaboration and especially when you're working with business users, I was thinking about this of myself as an example. And one of the things I'm really good at is admitting what I don't know. So I don't pretend to know something I don't know, but I tell them I'll find out. And then when I come back, I can explain to them, give them the answer to what they're looking for, and that builds trust when you acknowledge yourself, and people start to see you as, they can depend on you. They know you're going to get the answer, and just be there working with your team. So I know I've been there when people are doing software releases. I mean, in my role, I wasn't actually doing the pushing of the magic button, but being there to support them and knowing that I've got their back if they need anything. So I think once you have that trust, all the other things just fall into place.
Thank you. Gazheek. And as we continue with the conversation, as we are getting close to an end, I'll invite you, if you have any questions, our participants, students today watching, put them in the general chat. We're going to choose one from the chat for our next round. So Gazheek, continuing education. I'm sorry, no, we're in soft skills. Yes, what?
Okay,
what
I just got scared there for a second.
No, we talked about that, yes. What's something that you have seen, in others, that has helped them succeed?
Yeah, so the three biggest things I can think of, and it's something that we look at when we hire at our company too, is that you can't have any egos. So you can't walk into a room and think that you know everything or that you have all of the answers, right? So that also leans into that you have to have a willingness to learn and a willingness to work with people. So that's a big thing. And then the other thing too is also a willingness to share and teach knowledge, because it's you work in any sort of team, you need to share that knowledge across your team, because as much as we'd like to all think that we will stay at a position forever, or that we'll never want to leave something because it's great, people are going to leave, and that knowledge will go with that person. So that's why it's always important to keep with that idea of like constantly sharing knowledge and always being willing to learn things.
Thank you. Okay.
I would say that the big one for me, and Juanita touched on it when she mentioned trust, but I'll add another variable on that and say humility, right? Being humble doesn't mean you're necessarily a pushover, but you're willing to learn, you're willing to say I'm sorry, or you're willing to say I don't know. And then people begin to trust you more, and people actually like you, right? When you don't always have the answers. So I would say humility, and not learning from the business, learning from fellow IT people, and just always willing to soak up knowledge as often as you can.
Okay, and the last comment about the personal attributes essential for success, Matthew.
Yeah, so I think the most beneficial attribute for success has just been being enjoyable to be around. I've worked with people who are not honestly really good at their jobs, but they stay around because they don't cause problems with people, and they make people happy, they make people laugh, they make people smile. And while it might not be the best business decision to keep somebody like that around from like an output perspective, people don't like working with jerks. So that's kind of been one of the biggest things. And when you're interviewing for jobs, you're selling yourself. A lot of times they've read your resume, they know what certifications you have. A lot of that, in my experience in interviews, doesn't really come up as much as people doing, I think somebody recently described to me as like a vibe check. They just want to make sure that you're a nice guy, you're good at conversations, you're somebody that they actually want to work with day to day. So I think that's one of the most essential things for me, is just being a good person, being like fun to be around.
Thank you. So for the last question, we're going to choose here from the general chat. And I just had the idea of thinking databases right now. So we're going to create a composite key. I'm just kidding. A composite question. So if you could answer, how long did it take for you to get a job after graduation? And also, do you take the ethics of a company into account when choosing a job? If so, how much? So we'll start with Juanita. And then I'll invite anyone, if you want to comment on each other's, that's most welcome if you want to leave your mics open.
Okay, so I think I mentioned, the first question, I was lucky because at the time there weren't a lot of opportunities in the city for co-ops, and I was able to snag one of those. So I was very grateful. And then when they said, here's a job, I said, thank you very much. And I took that job and I thought, I'm going to do this job and figure it out later. So that was my approach. And I've kind of taken that approach during my career. So if an opportunity comes up, I take the job and then I figure it out. But the ethics of the company, I would say, looking back, or if it was today, I would be looking more for, my first priority would be the work-life balance and what the company had to offer. Like I think I saw Matthew had a couple of comments of companies that he would not choose to work for in the comments, and not specific names, but the types of companies. And I would align with that because I'm a person first, and I want to be treated like a person. And I guess the industry of the company would be of interest to me. And I would say probably 20% of my decision would be the ethics. I think I mean the ethics of what type of business that the company is in, if that's what people meant, would be a lesser concern than the type of job and the work-life balance.
Thank you, Juanita. And I just want to just throw this question in the chat, in the discussion, so you can decide to answer about how much do you consider the ethics of a company. And also there is another question that's being voted, so it'll be worth mentioning. It's up to you. And James is asking, now that you're established in your career, do you still encounter impostor syndrome? If so, how do you handle it? So I'll pass it to Gazheek.
Okay. Okay, so imposter syndrome every day. It's almost impossible not to, but that's just like kind of the nature of the job, you know, because the nature of the job is that you constantly go to work hoping for big problems to solve, right? And so eventually you reach a problem that kind of stumps you and it makes you think, oh my gosh, do I belong here? Should I even be here? Do I know what I'm doing, right? And so it happens all the time, and it's the nature of our industry, and sometimes it gets a little heavy and sometimes it doesn't. So it's always important to not focus on things when you get roadblocks. So it's important to remember that even things that you try that fail are super important. They help you learn, they help you refocus and rescope the problem set and everything like that. So it's important to try and keep that aspect of it. And it's also really important to I've put in the chat to like have good people around you that really kind of keep you grounded and that like pump up your tires, you know. So like for me, it's my partner, you know, like when I'm having like an off day, I'm just like, babe, I don't know what I'm doing, you know, and she sits and she reminds me like, no, you know what you're doing, sort of thing. And it's the same with like coworkers. Like I'll have coworkers that I'm just like, oh, you know, like I feel like I'm just kind of chasing my tail on this. Can you just help me like recenter myself, sort of thing? And so those are really important things to have. In terms of job, I had a job right away before I graduated, so it was super easy for me. I've been very fortunate in never really having to go without a job for too long, because there's always just opportunities in the field and in the industry. So I've just been very fortunate in that way. The other thing too is, oh yeah, okay, so the ethics. When I started off, definitely did not think about the ethics of the company, did not think about like how they would necessarily treat me in the industry, but I was like, hey, what's that? I get my foot in the door, I'm there, sort of thing, right? And so so that was it. But now that I've had a little bit more experience in it, I know what is out there, I know how you should be treated, because also at the time when I was graduating, it was still kind of like at the fringe of like that .NET explosion, where it was like the IT people were like treated like the rats in the basement, you know, and you just kind of threw like coffee and like cookies at them to keep them happy, sort of thing. So like that was kind of like the IT experience back then. And so now it's really shifted away from that, right? Like IT people are no longer considered like the dark backdoor people, you know, they're at the forefront of things. So yeah, so ethics is really important. And also from my work experiences working on different projects now, I've had the absolute privilege of working in things like internet safety and internet safety around children. So ethics with company has been a huge factor for me as well. So that is definitely something that I take into consideration now when I look at where am I working, the projects that I'm doing, and what sort of impacts are the things that I'm building going to have, right? So that's absolutely something I take into consideration.
How inspiring, Gazheek. Thank you for sharing. Kay.
Sorry, I've been so distracted with the chat. I can't remember the question.
Yeah, so I came up with a little bit of a composite here question. So we asked, how long did it take you to land in your first job? Some students, you know, have that question and maybe anxiety for after graduation. And when you were choosing where to work, did you take into account the ethics of a company like that? And if you want to throw in there, you know, over the years, how do you deal with imposter syndrome?
Yeah. How long did it take me? So I'll rewind a little bit quickly. I worked at MTS for my co-op term and made good relationships there. And someone there actually helped set me up for a junior developer job. But then about a month before graduating, I landed a job very connected to what I used to do back in my home country. So I ended up at Gross Life. So it didn't take me long to find a job. I also came here as an international student. So I had about 90 days to find a job after my course was done, or else I'd have to go back to Zambia. So the pressure was on for me there. In terms of ethics for that first job that I had, I would say initially it didn't play in as much because all I really wanted was a job. But now it's becoming more and more important. One of the things that I usually make known, to my leaders, but also people I work with is I always want room to be able to talk to people. Don't want to just be, given a task and you can't talk to anyone. So because I'm inherently an introvert, so being able to at least be forced to talk to people allows me to, make better connections and greater connections. So ethics does play a role right now, and not too far off from some of the comments that Matthew put in the chat there in terms of organizations, types of organizations that one wouldn't want to be associated with.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you for answering my combined questions. Just trying to give the audience an opportunity to get the most out of today's session. And Matthew.
All right, there were a lot of questions, and we've only got a couple of minutes. I'll try to answer them quickly. Let me just scroll back. Let's see here. Do I take the ethics of a company into account when choosing a job? I'm in the same boat as everybody else, not really. There are some things that I won't tolerate, but I feel like that's kind of the same for everybody. Like I don't want to work for like a blood diamond mine or somebody who has like sweatshops or something like that. Like those are kind of the basics. I've definitely left the job because of ethics of the company. And when looking for a job now that I have a job, I can take ethics a little more into consideration. But when you don't have a job and you need a job, you kind of just take what you can get a lot of the time. But if you have a job and you're just kind of looking to see what's out there, you can be a little bit more picky. And do I still encounter imposter syndrome every single day? And that's been like that for, I think, my entire life. And I handle it by, as I said before, having a nice supportive partner at home and a dog who will love me even if I don't have a job. So that is wonderful on my end, and I'm very fortunate. But also realizing that if I really was that bad that as I might think I am, I probably would not still have this job. So there's a little bit of validation in that. And yeah, it's at the very least, it's the one thing that helps me not to spiral and to kind of keep going down that road of, oh, well, if I'm really bad at this, then maybe I'm also bad at this. And maybe my wife actually doesn't love me, and maybe my dog doesn't like me, and going down that path is just realizing that I'm here. I've been here for a while. If things were really, truly terrible, then I probably would not be here. And that just kind of helps me not to spiral down that path.
Thank you so much for sharing. I think those everything that you have said today, it helps us as students right now too. And wow, what an incredible experience. I am glad you were able to share your experience with all of us as students. And we have run out of time. I want to thank the panelists for taking the time out of their busy schedules to share their experience with us today. Thank you, all of the participants who joined us in this session. A very lively chat that we had, and thank you to the panelists for answering and multitasking and giving us great, valuable experience and information, get a touch for the field out there. And thank you to the organizers who have made it possible to run the conference, and my team, Anais and Aman, working from the backstage, my champion Marnie for her support. And before we end the live stream, I have the opportunity to present you my source of inspiration, my 9-year-old daughter, Maya. She is the youngest attendee today. Maya, you want to come to wave to the camera? Yes, here is Maya. She's my source of inspiration. And this was the Alumni Panel for Inspire 2022. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.